Hey, how's it going, everybody? It's Thursday, April 3rd. We're coming at you live. We got Corey Connors, host of Sustainable Packaging Podcast.
Good morning.
And we got Adam Peak, People of Packaging Podcast host.
Hello, everybody.
You got me, Evelio Matos, host of Packaging Unboxed Podcast. What are we covering today, boys?
Tariffing.
Tariffs, more like definitelys.
Yeah. Crazy news coming at you yesterday with the tariffs and the big boards of different countries. So, I don't know. What do you think is going to happen, Corey?
I think it's going to affect all of us, like it or not. And we have to embrace it and move forward, figure it out together.
Let's talk about it.
Yo.
Hey, I think we need Corey to kick us off with a song by the
New Kids on the
Backstreet
Block.
Boys. Is it NKOTB or was it Backstreet Boys?
I
How
don't
did it go
know.
again?
It was the Tearing Up My Heart, I think, that song. And
But can you remind me of the melody?
No.
Oh, come on.
Your tariff in my heart.
Tariff in my heart when I'm with you. Yeah.
Okay. We got a little bit of.
You missed it.
We are
had
apart.
one shot.
Feel
It was good. It was good.
No matter how
You.
I feel, I
You're
feel
not
the
late.
same with or without you. That's how we're feeling about tariffs.
They
That's
are
right.
tearing us up.
That's right. You got to pay a tariff to enter this chat, ladies and gents.
It's you have to type 10% more words in the chat. Is what's going on, Hugh. We joke and we laugh about it because sometimes
You'd cry otherwise.
that's it's just okay, so let's talk about this packaging standpoint, fellas.
Chuck McAllister coming with the tariffs are going to be the death of us.
Boom.
Bomb
Dropped.
Can I just
I will
say?
say no,
as
you
somebody-
say it. You say it. You say it.
Somebody named Evelio Matos. When I see a name like Chuck McAllister, I'm a little jealous. My name's like kind of wishy-washy, Evelio. And like,
Your
people are like,
name is
oh,
awesome.
that's such a pretty name. And I'm like, that's not what I'm going for here. And then I hear Chuck McAllister. I'm like, oh, I'm like that name is like so
Strong
like,
name.
American. And I'm like, man,
Yeah.
I'm jealous.
Okay, Hugh did correct us.
That's
Oh,
right.
thank you, Hugh. In sync.
Thank you for
Tearing
chat
up my heart.
GPTing that. I want to first of all say something that when I was fake yelling for my mom to join, my dad was listening to the show and tried to go get her to join.
Ed.
Made me so
Pete.
happy. Mom! I was so happy to do that.
One of the first times you introduced yourself to me, you said, "Son of Ed."
Yeah, from the Clan of Peak.
Mhm.
But let's talk about. We can't do anything about tariffs. We cannot stop them. We can't contain them. We are only 3 people, but we can do things and talk about things from a packaging perspective.
Yep.
Corey Connors, I want to ask you first because you're the smartest of all of us.
That's true.
It is true. That's what everybody says. You have more leather-bound books than any of us.
I haven't heard that.
What
And
what are things what are things that companies can start doing right now today to help them navigate and maybe minimize the impacts of tariffs so that they can keep their costs down and
Yep.
keep their margins where they are so they can keep paying people? Go.
I think the knee-jerk reaction is to buy more, right? We want to stock up and have a bunch of inventory, but when you really look at the cost of doing that and the risk of doing that, it can backfire. I saw a post the other day about somebody buying 10,000 labels, and they regretted it because their artwork changed a month later, and now those labels are now garbage. So
Yep.
I think what you're looking at is an opportunity to consider where you're sourcing your product and partnering with your suppliers to store that packaging for you, possibly longer term, and deliver it as you need it. So you have to look at your supply chain, I think, is the answer to the whole thing.
All right. So when you're saying buy more and then have your supplier store it, not necessarily buy more of the finished goods, but buy more of the raw materials.
Yes. Be ready to produce, so you're not hit with these huge fines later.
Yeah.
Same with EPR.
Avelio, you work a lot more. I'm just going to hijack the conversation and ask the questions. Because you work with a lot of international companies, and I know Corey, you do as well. I work mostly with US based companies. So, America, like just, but I mean, a lot of stuff that I work with isn't typically sourced overseas. Labels, shrink sleeves, folding carton boxes, maybe a little bit more, but there's a lot of that that's
Maybe
already
the raw material sometimes.
Obviously, tariffs can be impacted by that because of various other inputs to those, but companies are buying from local companies. But Avelio, is the conversation...
But are they really buying from local companies? Or are these local companies buying from suppliers that have stock in the U.S.? That material is coming from overseas. Like at some point...
Very common, yes.
Right, like at some point, something's coming from somewhere.
Yeah, of course. But I'm saying like paper...
you will be impacted.
You're going to be impacted, but it's not like you have to pay a 10% tariff on the folding cartons, right? So if you are importing, we'll just say paper, which is the largest input cost. If you're importing paper from Canada,
but you are paying
you just
more.
Let me finish.
Because you're skipping over, like, I think a really important point here, which is I'm buying folding cartons locally here in the US, so I'm not going to pay a tariff. But if we go back far enough, some of those raw materials are being imported.
That's what I'm getting to. So I'm telling you this.
You're skipping over this piece. And I think this is the part that a lot of people...
I'm getting right to it.
I wanted to say something.
If you are a folding carton company and you are importing paper is the largest part of the folding carton cost. If you're importing that paper from, say, Canada, and that has whatever the list was, that has a tariff. So if that's a 20% tariff coming from Canada, and it's, so you're buying it for, I'll just say it's $1, now it's $1.20, then that cost is going to come out in a cost increase. The difference is if you just bought your folding, let's say Canada was using their own paper mills, they were making all their stuff there, and then you were buying the finished goods, you have a 20% tariff on a higher price point. And so, yes, still going to...
Wouldn't finished goods come from Finland?
Yeah, it's a good point.
What's coming from Finland?
Finished
goods. Keep going.
Finished goods. Yeah, so everybody's going to feel the impact of tariffs. But Avelio, I was curious because you do work with a lot more international manufacturers. Are there now maybe even benefits? Because I saw you had up there like China, the tariffs from China now are going to be way higher. Are you finding companies move from like, hey, we can't actually make this in the US? So say it's a rigid setup box with magnets and LED lights. They're still going to have tariffs, but are they moving that from, say, China to Vietnam or Mexico? Or how is that being navigated right now?
Well, in the last 24 hours, that's exactly what's happening, right? Like, I mean, there's been tariffs forever, right? But even still, like anything that I'm bringing into the U.S., we typically avoid going to China just because there's already tariffs in place for that before yesterday. So it's like, where can we go that can make it for less than you could do it in the U.S., right? Because that's the challenge. Every brand, and it's not hey, I'm trying to skimp around doing production in the U.S. There's just things that we can't do here,
right?
And there's things that we can't do here at a reasonable cost,
right?
So finding a country that may even have tariffs that you can still bring it into the U.S. and still be below the cost of goods with American manufacturing.
Yeah.
So now it's kind of going down these lists and finding companies, finding countries where they might have a lower tariff rate, right? So Jamaica's at 10, but they probably don't make rigid boxes with
Or
LEDs
Georgia,
in
right?
Jamaica.
Like
So yeah,
Atlanta,
I mean,
you can't buy anything from Georgia. That's crazy. We just like picked a random state. It's definitely not a country. I'm joking. I'm joking, everybody. I'm joking. I know Georgia.
Yeah. Or you can go to Belize and get stuff for 10% for a 10% tariff. Just because a country's on here doesn't mean that they're going to produce anything. And I think that's a challenge. And also, you also don't want to move your goods to another country just because the tariffs are low without seen the quality.
Right.
Not only seen the quality, but also visited the factory and the production site, make sure that they're not doing, not have child labor, not have prisoner labor. Like, what regulations do they have? Like, what working conditions do they have?
Great point.
So those are some of the things that you have to like really look at. I know for us, like at IDP, we do, we've got a factory in Romania. So now Romania is part of, it's part of the European Union. So there's 20% tariffs there. We've got production in Indonesia. I think that's like 32% tariffs coming in. But then you also look at the cost of labor, the cost of equipment. Those things may be lower, and still with those tariff rates, still be less. And then, having had all of the audits and certificates and everything else in place, like you may want to opt to go with one of these facilities versus rolling the dice on something new just because you've got a 10% tariff and lower.
That by the way, could go away. I mean, that's the thing. Like anytime there's a quick change like this, right? So like tariffs are implemented. Well, they could go up or they could be eliminated. Like if the stock market continues to be decimated, maybe they just go, oh, oops, our bad. And then they roll all the tariffs back. And now you've gone through all this work to change facilities. That's why I'm curious, like, are the changes, probably there's conversations happening right now, but.
So that's a good point. And then we'll get to some of these questions that we have in here.
Yeah. Some great questions in the chat.
With Indonesia specifically, they've been working already to lower the tariffs in Indonesia for American goods as of, and I'm looking at my calendar, as of like February. They've already been in talks. They've been here in the US. They've been to the White House. Like, how do we lower the rate of goods coming into Indonesia from the US? That conversation is already happening. So there may be something on the table already that in the next 2 or 3 weeks gets signed and changed, and all of a sudden the tariffs from one country that's at 32% drops down to 10%.
I like that you had to look at a calendar to remember that February was a month.
Dude,
you don't even have a calendar over there, right?
I knew it was 2 months.
Calendar. I had to look at my calendar. You have an actual calendar hanging on a wall?
No, but I've got my computer calendar like over here on this monitor.
Okay. I know Corey does because he's old school. But
I love paper.
You gotta check his Rolodex. It's all but I just know it was like 2 months ago. I just couldn't tell you what month it was.
Got my Palm Pilot out so I could check what month February is.
But that's the thing, right? Like you can switch. Nobody's going to switch production today. No, at least I hope not, because if you switch production today because of tariffs, you're going to be in a world of hurt, come 3-4 months from now when things change. And maybe that country tariffs go up. And that's the thing, is that things are so in flux that you have to like really kind of get through whatever orders are in place. Anything that you've shipped that's already on the water is going to get hit with these tariffs. Suck it up. That part really is terrible, right? Yeah. There's nothing you can do. Yeah, it's terrible. But next is like, okay, how do I optimize what I currently have that's being produced without changing locations, right? Because changing location, changing manufacturers, changing supply, like all that stuff, it's huge. It completely upsets your supply chain. Will they have goods on hand? Will they be able to deliver on time? Like all these things that happen that take months to get in place can't be done quickly. But we do have a question here, and it's nothing to do with tariffs, but I thought this was interesting because you guys are label guys. Hugh mentioned that labels have an expiration date.
They do.
And why do they have an expiration date?
Yeah, it is. So Hugh nailed it. It's because of the properties of the adhesive. And so typically you're going to have a shelf life of, depending on the adhesive structure, 12 to 24 months. But there's been plenty of times where somebody's like, hey, my labels aren't sticking. What's going on? It's the same material. And you're like, oh, the lot was from 3 years ago. And they're like, oh, I didn't think that, like, the adhesive will start to lose its stickiness basically, and its adherence. It doesn't always happen, but yeah, I agree. Labels are such a small part of the overall packaging costs. There will be minor increases on labels, but packaging, because labels are packaging, not this packaging, definitely packaging. But yeah, thank you for giving me a chance to wax poetic about labels. What else we got? At the end, higher cost will be paid by the customer. As a result, inflation will increase by the end user. It's probably what's going to happen. You're right, Mohammed.
Yes.
What did our friend Chris Olson say?
Chris says, will tariffs influence brands to switch from plastic to different material and packaging?
Definitely not. I don't think.
EPR will.
EPR could. If you think about, we do make plastic in the US. Like we drill oil, we make plastic here. If they can lightweight the plastic, they'll probably do that for EPR. I actually think tariffs could lead to more
plastic
because it's such a cheap, lightweight material, and paper is heavy, and there, like we mentioned, there's a lot of importing of it.
Yeah. It's by the pound, right?
No, and then this one from Nina. Hi, Nina. How are you?
Hi, Nina.
Hey.
Big fan of Nina. So
love that picture. That's cool.
She's asking if this might address non-functional slack fill. And I know in Europe, there's a big push to have less than 40% volume of slack fill per product shipped, which is supposed to go into place, I think, by 2030. But going back to the plastics question, like, this might actually increase the use of plastic because it's cheaper. This might also push to have less space in packaging faster because you're just reducing the size, like you're really optimizing for scale. So it would potentially reduce the amount of slack fill in a pack that's shipped.
Yeah, if you think about like this, like I've got this Funko Pop of the greatest basketball player ever, Nikola Jokic, but there's a lot of, this is obvious, this is not made here in the US, right? Like there's plastic in it, there's paper. They can easily shrink down the size of this box. They can keep the manufacturing at the same place wherever it's being made, but they can just make this box smaller to help offset some of the costs of tariffs. So I think that's another way that we'll see brands. They should be doing that anyways. It's an easy way to.
You can get rid of at least a third of the left-hand side of that box.
Yeah.
But when I see you hold that thing up, all I see is microplastic. Just you are leading.
It's only because I eat it and it just goes straight to my testes.
Chat coming in with unfortunately, largest manufacturing companies are in Southeast Asia, and those countries have been taking advantage of the US. So where do you go?
I would say on that point,
I wouldn't necessarily say they're taking advantage of the US. I mean,
I don't think so either, because
if we're buying and we're looking for cheap, but we're not willing to work for cheap, what do you do? We've created a need in the market, and they're filling it in a way that we can't.
Correct. And by the way, the US is one of the largest exporters as well. Like, we have a tremendous export economy from the US that it's not just on goods that are coming in, it's that there's these reciprocal tariffs that as we are sending stuff out, the demand, when what's the phrase I've used? If you want more of something, you subsidize it. If you want less of something, you tax it. So it's like we're saying we want less of this stuff, and then other countries, if they come in and they say we want less of the stuff that you're manufacturing, well, that's going to hurt people here. if that ends up happening. So it's a big giant.
I like Chris's point here, guys. I wonder if packaging will disappear from some items totally.
Mhm.
And label will be the packaging. Just
Yeah.
the label. Yeah.
That's it.
I think this is very feasible. I think it's more likely to have companies explore things like that where
Theft.
they couldn't in the past.
The flip side of that is theft could increase. Some packaging is made with a ton of slack fill and void fill, so that somebody can't just put it in their bag and leave.
Mhm.
So you
Like
could
those Costco big plastic things. Yeah.
He was saying
That's
that there's
totally
superior maple syrup coming out of Southeast Asia, but he won't. No,
he's not saying that.
He's not saying that. No, and quality may be superior for certain items made in different places. It's not even Southeast Asia. It's just
all
some
over the
companies
world.
are set up to do certain things because that's kind of the way the market's gone. To switch things around is impossible. And to try to make some of these products, like I know we do a lot of like rigid boxes and setup boxes and collapsible things out of like gray board, and the equipment for that is millions of dollars,
Mhm.
you know, and it's coming out of Europe. They don't make that here in the US. So whether you're buying an Italian machine, a German machine to do these things and spending, $1.5 million to bring in that piece of equipment, not including shipping and setup and all that other stuff,
Right.
tack on an extra 20% for that machine. Are companies in the US that are going to try to fill that void going to have the financing for that machine?
They won't, because
tariffs?
inflation, we're going to have inflation, and interests are going to, like, the cost of debt is going to go up. And so my personal take is that we already have a very global economy.
Mhm.
It's been here for a while. Are there pros and cons to it? Of course. I don't think that the answer is to just tariff everything, because if you actually run the numbers, and plenty of people smarter than us have, these tariffs will generate maybe $300 to $400 billion, which sounds like a lot of money to me. That's a lot of money to the overall setup that we have. When I hear people say, like, well, we're going to eliminate the income taxes, it's like, that's not going to do it. It's just not even close relative to our federal, like, this is all publicly available stuff. So it's like, what's really the point? That's what I don't understand. Like, what is really the point of these? And I don't know that we'll get to it, but what we can do is help brands understand, like, lightweighting, right sizing, finding other countries, doing some other stuff. Like, we can help brands out with that.
Right.
Material selections. Yeah.
But even like Chuck's saying, like, footwear, you've seen a lot of shoe brands that have gone away from boxes and gone to hangers, right? The little hanger that holds, like the little hanger that holds those, what are like Yo Dudes or Sanex and all those types of flimsier shoes,
Crocs and stuff.
That little hanger is way cheaper than doing a full box, and then it reduces the overall volume of that product when it's shipped. When we're talking bulk, right? Now you're doing a big Gaylord box. It's got dividers in there, and all the products are in there with the hangers. Get to the shoe store, gets to the location. They just pull those out, hang them up. You save that box.
That's been happening for a while.
It has been happening for a while, but it's
with lower price bulk volume shoes. We haven't really seen that.
I've seen some like classic Jordans on a little paper hanger.
I've not seen that. I've never seen that.
But you'll see them also eliminate the secondary box. Instead of box in a box, they're shipping a single corrugated container.
Fox box.
Right. Richard.
We got somebody coming in saying, do you think the high volume brands are used to getting a certain price for finished goods that are going to accept a high price to offset these tariffs? Or look to bid out projects to US-based manufacturing facilities? I think both. Right? I think they're going to go and try to find a U.S. supplier. I think they should, but you're not going to get the same product because of you're limited on what's possible here in the U.S. That's not a good thing or a bad thing. It's just a fact.
Mhm.
And then you're going to have to see like what those costs are. Are those materials coming in from other countries, or are those materials coming in tariffed? How's that going to impact your overall cost? Like you're going to have to do a lot of cost analysis. And like we said before, you don't necessarily want to switch directly to another supplier right away. So there's time. And by the time that you get to that point, tariffs changed. That's the other thing to be concerned about. Hugh Curtis, last comment, using a total cost of ownership approach. That's, I think, what's most critical is total cost of ownership at this point is, your TCO is more prevalent than ever. And that means looking at the total cost from start to finish. And that's going to be, tariffs, but like warehousing, distribution, like all of those different things, touch points, fulfillment. You have to like look at every single thing. And then Hugh Curtis's last comment, last comment, take into account the cost of finding new source, qualifying the new source, reviewing certificate specs, all of that stuff. And then his last comment, storage conditions.
I would say this to that point. I think that we will see more products bulk purchased and then labeled rather than direct decorated. And I'm thinking about like bottles and things like that. And the reason for that is because there's so much uncertainty now. You have products, you're going to sell products if you're putting them into a container. And if you buy them all, screen printed or whatever it is especially if you're buying those from overseas, you're going to have to buy a lot more potentially, and your obsolescence risk goes up. I would suspect that we'll actually see more labeled cans, more labeled bottles,
right,
more labeled shampoos, just because it's a lot easier to warehouse unprinted stuff, blanks, and buy labels as you need them, because labels are packaging.
Mm-hmm.
You guys suck. You're the worst. You know what? You guys are worse than tariffs.
So just keep, what you should do today, same thing you're doing yesterday. Nothing changes.
Try to take over the world.
Yeah, just keep moving. I would say to manufacturers and suppliers that are out there and are listening, what you don't want to do is you don't want to bulk buy product on behalf of your clients, because if they make a change, you're screwed. And I've seen that happen. Last time we went through some of these things where suppliers are like, well, they're buying 100,000 of these. I'm going to stock up on 200,000 of them, and I'll sell them these goods at the lower rate. And then once that 100,000 are through, customers like, hey, we're changing. And then suppliers like, but what about this?
Right.
So don't get stuck. Don't get caught. And Chris coming in saying labels are not packaging. So appreciate that.
Chris is smart.
Oh, no, she said labels are packaging. Sorry.
Thank you. Said the liar.
But if you are looking to switch, call me. I know a guy.
Give me a call. All right, guys. We'll catch you tomorrow. Tomorrow's pack of the week.
Yeah.
Let us know what your favorite packaging is, and we'll maybe cover it.